There we go. From Russellville, Arkansas, this is Midwest Sports Saturday. Hi, I'm Joey McWilliams. Glad to have the microphone with me at this point in time, and we are pleased and privileged to get to be here with you from the campus of Arkansas Tech University. Come on up here, Sam Strasner, and he is set to be my first guest. So we are getting in a little bit after 4 o'clock today. That's why I still had the headset on, so I could make sure I was getting the proper audio and all that. How are you, man? It's my first opportunity to get to see you in a while.
Well, it's very good to see you, Joey. How you been?
I am doing well. I want to tell you that today's broadcast of Midwest Sports Saturday is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and we are very thankful and pleased and privileged also to have them as a sponsor for this show today. Well, I want to introduce you then really quickly to Sam Strasner, and Sam is he's the play-by-play announcer for the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys and Golden Sons. And Sam, man, this is the first opportunity we've had to work in this particular setup. So thank you for coming on and being on live with me this afternoon.
Well, it's very good to be here, Joey. Appreciate you being here and the support that you give and the coverage that you give to NCAA Division II athletics through your various ventures. It's valued by those of us who work at NCAA Division II institutions, and we appreciate you being here to give these student athletes this platform here today.
Well, thank you very much. It really is an honor. I'm very, very grateful to get to do it. Now, I know that you're sweating just a little bit. I'm sweating more than just a little bit. And I really thought that after the first show of the season this year in Durant, when it was 100 plus and the humidity may have been 99 point, that was probably as rough as it was going to get. I think the humidity may have topped 100% right here today.
It is pretty sticky right here right now. That seems like it's been the way it's been all season long. It's been some tough conditions, but surprisingly, even with now the reduced practice time that they get in August, 2 days or a thing in the past, I really haven't seen that much of, cramps and those kind of things that you would expect to see under these conditions so far this season. And that's really a testament to the job that players throughout the Great American Conference did during the summer months to get themselves ready to compete this year. And really it's a high level of football that we're getting a chance to watch each and every Saturday.
That's an interesting point, and I've noticed that as well. I'm used to seeing, repeated stoppages in action because players have gone down because of cramps and things like that, which is, understandable in these circumstances because it really is all but liquid out here right now. So if you haven't watched the football game outdoors today, or maybe you're going to one a little bit later on tonight, you definitely need to wear as light of clothing as absolutely possible. You're going to be up in the press box, though, here in a little bit.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Matter of fact, generally speaking, sometimes when it's this warm outside, the air conditioner starts working a little too hard. I hate to say this right now, given the fact how hot it is right now, but sometimes in the second half I need a blanket up there.
Oh, well. All right, if you're going to be watching these games outdoors, sorry, and Sam's really not as concerned.
Yeah, all right.
He's wearing a blanket. Well, okay, we are here on campus at Arkansas Tech University in beautiful Russellville, Arkansas, seriously, a beautiful town, very close to Lake Dardanelle. It's been a number of years since I've called a football game here as being formerly part of the Southeastern Savage Storm broadcast crew, and so I was in the booth way over there. I know the visitor radio is in the booth behind us over here now, and again, blessings to them. Yep. It is a very nice setup, but it's a beautiful campus. Talk really quickly about this campus.
Well, Arkansas Tech University was founded in 1909, and as of this fall, we have almost 12,000 students on campuses here in Russellville as well as up in Ozark. This year, we had a record number of freshmen enroll at Arkansas Tech, but 1,726 freshmen here on the Russellville campus and 372 freshmen on the Ozark campus, and that was more than a 20% increase over our freshman class of a year ago. So it's really a growing and dynamic university with a lot of different things going for it. We have really a stackable degrees focus that allows us to serve a wide variety of learners, and just a great place to be. And just to give you a kind of a perspective on the growth, whenever I enrolled here as a freshman in 1997, we had about 4,000 students then, and so over the span of just a little over 20 years, the enrollment has almost tripled. And so it's really a growing, and it's now the third largest university in the state of Arkansas.
Behind the U of A and?
Arkansas State.
Arkansas State. Yeah. Okay. Well, then congratulations to Arkansas Tech. Again, very much a fantastic campus. Now, we're here to talk some football today, of course, on Midwest Sports Saturday, presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. In, an hour and 50 minutes or so, we're going to have some Great American Conference football going on. just behind us to the north of us here, again, a great field. Talk about the campus here. It really is nice. The football record, though, for the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys right now, maybe not as nice. 0-3 coming in today. So it is under new head coach Kyle Shipp. He came in the spring, was going to take over as a coordinator, be one of the coordinators on staff. He was previously at Arkansas Monticello for 5 years as the offensive coordinator there and had some very productive years there with the Boll Weevils. Things changed, and he actually assumed the head coach position. And so 3 games in, still yet to pull a W off. What's the mood here in Russellville?
Well, I think there's a great deal of understanding of the situation that Coach Shipp inherited. If you look at the progression of the program, we had a 3-year span there from 2015 through 2017 when the program was 22-12, played in a couple of bowl games. But then last year, a 3-8 season, and from that team, you lose the likes of running back Brian Allen, who was the all-time leading rusher here at Arkansas Tech. You lose the likes of Quay Rose and K.J. Reed, 2 of the better defensive players to play here in a long time. And so really a lot of new faces filling some very important roles this year for the Wonder Boys. And so I think the 0-3 start is not that surprising. If you look a little bit inside some of that, the UA Monticello and Henderson State games were pretty much coin flip games, just didn't go the Wonder Boys' way. And so they've been competitive, and very competitive in 2 out of those 3 games. And so I think right now, as you look forward to a little bit this week and then even more so in the weeks to come, the schedule becomes a little bit more manageable between here and got Harding looming the last week of the year. Of course, that'll be a tough one. But these next 7 weeks, if you look at it, I think that an objective person would say the Wonder Boys have a fair chance to compete and win each of the next 7 weeks. That doesn't mean they're going to go 7-0, but they'll have a chance to compete and get some wins here during this stretch in the schedule.
Well, and the game that you didn't mention, of course, you mentioned Monticello and Henderson State. The game you didn't mention was Ouachita. Ouachita picked to win the Great American Conference Football Championship regular season title again, and really have not shown any signs that was a bad pick to this point. So that one a little bit tougher game, but still. And I appreciate the explanation on that, because that's something that if you just look at it on paper and think, wow, 0-3, I mean, my goodness, it's what's going on in Russellville.
Yeah, it's, I think that a lot of folks kind of assume that, when you look at the fact that there have been 8 all-sports trophies handed out in the Great American Conference and 6 of them are here in Russellville, that's indicative of the success that we've had overall here. And so when you see the football program, which in a lot of people's minds is kind of the flagship program of an athletic department, when you see it struggling a little bit, it is a bit unusual. But definitely looking forward to some better days to come in the not-too-distant future, especially under Coach Shipp's leadership. He's the first Arkansas Tech alumnus to be the head football coach here in 40 years. In fact, just back here at the tailgating, I had a chance to shake the hand of the last gentleman who was an alumnus of Tech and the head coach here, Leon Anderson, who was the head football coach here back in the late 70s. Matter of fact, before that, led Arkansas Tech to a 1968 AIC championship in football as our quarterback, and then came back as the head coach. And it had been 40 years since an alumnus of Arkansas Tech had been the head coach. And so very excited for what Kyle Shipp is going to do. Not only is he an alumnus of Arkansas Tech, but he's a native of Morrilton, just down the road about 25 miles. And so Kyle understands Arkansas high school football. He knows where the talent is, and he's going to lay down some recruiting pipelines that are really going to benefit the Wonder Boys in the years to come.
Well, this Northwest Arkansas area, the NWA, did I say it right?
Absolutely.
NWA.
Yeah.
This Northwest Arkansas area definitely, I mean, there's some good football that takes place in this part of the state, no doubt about that. So if he can get a pipeline coming back this direction, I'm sure it will help a lot. Take us through a little bit of this offense, too. You mentioned Brian Allen, and I remember calling games that he was in. He was one of those players that was around for a long time. Yes. And so, I mean, without him there, from where is this offense coming?
Right now they're a little bit stronger in the run game right now than in the pass game at this moment. Got a lot of really talented freshmen at the wide receiver spot, but they're still freshmen, and so that's a really promising group for down the line. Quarterback play so far has been very good at times. Manny Harris and Carter Burcham have split time there and have both really contributed. Got a couple of new guys at running back. Caleb Beatty, who transferred in from Missouri Southern, has been effective as a running back. Got a freshman from Mayflower, Deion Simmons, who has really kind of been that spark plug guy. Kind of made that third string tailback who's really come in and given a spark late in the game. And then the most interesting story on the Wonder Boys offense is probably a gentleman by the name of Wallace Foote. Wallace played here as a freshman in 2013. He was a standout at Benton High School. Before that, played here as a freshman in 2013, and then life led him other directions. But here he is back in school 6 years later as a 24-year-old sophomore, and he's the leading rusher right now for the Wonder Boys. And it's just he is an example of what happens at this NCAA Division II level. That two in there, a lot of times it's about second chances, and Wallace Foote right now is taking full advantage of his second chance, not only on the football field, but more importantly in the classroom, and what that can mean for him and his family for the rest of his life.
That is part of the reason that we do what we do here at MidwestSports.net, OklahomaSports.net, ArkansasSports.net, and on this channel is to get to tell those stories about these athletes and coaches and teams that may not have had an opportunity to get those stories told. That's incredible, Sam. Yeah. That really is nice. Sam Strasner, the play-by-play announcer for the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys and Golden Suns here on Midwest Sports Saturday, which is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And then you talk about the offense some. The defense as well. I mean, they have a tall order again tonight against Southern Arkansas. Now, we'll talk with Dan Gregory, your counterpart for tonight, a little bit later on. If he finds me, that's the thing with Dan. I don't know. If he finds me, we'll get to talk to him. We'll see how that works out. But, I know that Coach Keopple said that the team's licking its wounds just a little bit. And we have some video from Coach Keopple here in just a moment. But the team's licking its wounds just a little bit from the game last week, 31-0. And so the offense didn't show as much, but it's a little bit more powerful, I think, than what that zero on the scoreboard would reflect. So how does the defense counter that tonight? Well,
the strength of the Wonder Boys defense is really the defensive line. Depth along the defensive front is one of the real challenges in Division II football. But Coach Shipp feels like he's got 12, 13 guys that he can rotate in and out on that defensive line positions without any real drop-off in production. And so that's been the strength of the Wonder Boys defense so far. And it'll be an interesting matchup here tonight because Southern Arkansas, at this time, as they try to replace a four-time all-conference quarterback in Barrett Renner, the Mule Riders right now leaning a little bit more on the run game. And so that battle up front between Southern Arkansas's offensive line and Tech's defensive line, trying to either get that running game going or stop it, that'll be one of the keys in tonight's game.
That was interesting to me too, from seeing Barrett Renner just throw the ball all over the field and it wasn't just Renner too. Those were some pretty phenomenal receivers, wide receivers, tight ends that he had with which to work during his time. But the change has been a fairly smooth one. I mean, this has been a Southern Arkansas team that's been in the top 10 already in the nation in D2 in rushing.
Oh, absolutely. And you got two of the top 8 rushers in the Great American Conference on their roster in Cordavian Washington and then also Sir Charles Perkins. And so they can rotate those two guys in. We talked earlier about the heat tonight and how that'll be a factor. And having two guys that are both in the top 8 in the conference in rushing will definitely benefit the Mule Riders here tonight from a depth standpoint.
All right, while we have Sam with us just a moment longer, and I know that you have pregame to go to here in just a little bit, so thank you for taking some time here with me. My wife, Jody, the beautiful Mrs. MidwestSports.net, was able to make the trip with me today, and we were looking at the campus and talking about some things, and she learned a little bit about Jerry. And so tell us a little bit about Jerry. Now, this is what I have heard, that in 2013 he was introduced or adopted as the official ambassador for Arkansas Tech University, and that's the first time in 76 years. So two things. Number one, is he still living with you? And number two, what was he doing for the last 76 years before he came back and decided to kick it into gear again?
Well, I'll take the first one first. I don't know if you've ever had somebody move into town, Joey, who comes to work at maybe your place of work, and they get there and they can't find a place to live and they need a place to bunk. They say, hey, man, can I sleep on your couch for a week or two? And then they end up staying for a month or two and then a year or two. I think we may have all known of that happening at least over the years.
Right.
Jerry's kind of that at our house. He came when he came to work at Arkansas Tech in 2013. He needed a place to bunk, and we've been very, very happy to have him as a roommate for the last 6 years. My wife Heather has primary responsibility on him on a day-in, day-out basis, and we also have an outstanding student worker in Lauren Brown from Harrison, Arkansas, who helps us with Jerry. And then on top of that, if you come to a Tech game, you will see him escorted around by several members of our U.S. Army ROTC program on campus, and that is a tie back to the original Jerry, and that gets to your second question. The story of Jerry goes all the way back to the 1930s. That's when the original Jerry lived. And
so this one is not the original.
That's right. This is the first modern Jerry,
Okay.
the one you'll see at ball games now.
You have to ask these questions anymore. I mean, this is hardcore reporting now. I mean, we got some good journalism going on. So go back to the 30s.
Digging deep into the archives. So the original Jerry, if we just look a little bit here to our north, back here there's a building called Crabaugh Hall.
Okay.
There used to be a building there that looked just like that, and we called it Old Main, since replaced by Crabaugh Hall. There was a gentleman who worked in there by the name of Mr. Young. He was our business manager here on campus, and W.O. Young. And he brought this bulldog that he owned named Jerry to campus with him on a regular basis. He was the business manager here, and it got a little boring in the business office. So Jerry would wander out the front steps of Old Main, and at that time we had a National Guard armory located just a little bit to our west here. And there were some National Guardsmen that were stationed there, and newspaper articles of that era tell us that the guardsmen there adopted Jerry as if he was their own, and that Jerry was at all of the social activities of importance there at the armory. And so that's why when we brought Jerry back, when the Student Government Association voted to restore that tradition in 2013, that's why the ROTC guys and gals help us out now with taking Jerry around, because they're kind of the modern-day descendants of those National Guardsmen back in the 1930s. And it's just been a great tradition to bring back here to Arkansas Tech.
Well, I appreciate that. I know so much more. And you know, I've had an opportunity to work with Sam with trips on Great American Conference broadcasts as working with the GAC fairly closely in that, but I didn't know all that. All I know, and I do know this, that Jerry says, fight on.
That's all we know.
That's all I know.
That's all he can say.
That's all he can say.
Anytime you hear him barking, that's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying. Fight on. Well, Sam, hey, listen, for the Wonder Boys tonight, fight on.
Yes, sir.
And success to them and you. And I know that it's another tough matchup tonight, but I await a very good call, and I want to say Sam does a great job. I've listened to his broadcasts, specifically basketball. I don't know if I've had a chance to hear a football broadcast before, but basketball, you all do a great job, and so keep it up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for stopping by. That's Sam Strasner, who's the play-by-play announcer for the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys and Golden Suns. Let's take just a moment then, and here I said that we'd get a chance to hear from Coach Keopple, and so we'll bring you that right now as the Sports Information Director for Southern Arkansas, Jacob Humphrey, had an opportunity to sit down and visit with Coach Bill Keopple, and well, let's see what that sounds like.
I'm Jacob Humphrey with MurrayAthletics.com, and I'm joined alongside head football coach Bill Keopple. He's in his 11th year on the sidelines for the Mule Riders. And, Coach, here we are. We're about, I guess you can say maybe a fourth of the way through the season. You've got 3 games under your belt. Kind of give us a little bit of a state of where your program's at heading into Week 4.
Well, obviously right now we're trying to lick our wounds from last weekend. I mean, that was things didn't go our way at all, the way we wanted them to go. But, you look back the whole season. I mean, we started off really strong at Southern Nazarene and really felt good about a running game coming out of the game. And then Oklahoma Baptist came into our place, and we knew we were going to have a hard time stopping their passing offense, and we did. And that they are one of the strongest offenses, I think, in our league this year. And so we had came down to a final field goal, 48-yard field goal to win that football game. So I feel very fortunate we slipped out of that one. I mean, the thing we came out of the game feeling offensively that we were starting to gel a little bit. I mean, we had over 500 yards of offense, just some self-inflicted turnovers that cost us from scoring a lot of points and putting that game out of reach early. And so you're feeling pretty good about where you're at offensively at that point going into the Harding game. And Harding's always going to be a big game. Right now their program's really running really well, and we feel like ours is running well. And the score ended up not being any indicator of the football game. I think we kind of let go of the rope offensively a little bit there in the second half, and we threw 2 pick sixes, threw 3 interceptions, and 2 of them for pick 6, which really made the score look really, really bad for us. And in situations where we're throwing balls into places we had no business throwing balls into, and that's the thing we got to get fixed. And so that was disappointing, very disappointing, because we had a packed house here. It's family day here. The atmosphere was great. We're riding the longest winning streak in Division II football, home winning streak in the country, and that hurt to lose that. So we kind of got knocked to our knees, and we're trying to regroup. We got to go to Arkansas Tech this weekend and get ourselves back together, and hopefully we can go get us a win.
And Coach, you talk about heading to Arkansas Tech on Saturday. Week 4 matchup. 6 p.m. kickoff from Thone Stadium. This is a series since 2007. It hasn't been very friendly for the road team. In fact, the last time a road team won in the series was in 2007, an SAU victory over the Wonder Boys in Russellville. Talk a little bit about the kind of what you've been telling the guys, the mindset that they need to have, knowing that it's going to be a really tough place to play and that this could very well be a really pivotal game for you guys moving forward into the season.
Yeah, it's a big pivotal game for us, and we have talked about that going up there, and it hasn't been friendly to us. Obviously, my first 2 years here, we went up there, and they were a really good football team, and we were a really terrible football team, so we got to put it on us pretty hard. And but since that point, going up there, we've taken 3 good teams up there and came away with losses. And their program over the years has been a little bit up and down, and you never know which year how that's going to work out. And they've had some good teams at Arkansas Tech here in recent years. Last year it kind of fell apart for them. Right now they're struggling a little bit. Obviously we're struggling right now as to where we coming out of last week's game. We thought we were a little bit better position than we were, but so it's a big game for both teams. I mean, they got their back against the wall. We know they're going to come out fighting for all they're worth with being 0-3 right now, and so we're expecting all they can give us. And I don't know, that's where we got to find out about ourselves. Or how good are we? Can we come back and get ourselves together and go get us a road win in a place that's been tough for us? So it's a big pivotal game for both teams, and they all are. I mean, it's like I've told my team since day one. Each game only counts one, guys. I mean, we try to make some of them bigger than others, and they're not. They all just count one. And that Harding game stung. And can we reset and get ourselves together and go up there and get our mind right and play at a level we need to play to win a football game? That's going to be the question for us right now, and it should be a good football game.
Yeah, it should. Coach, we appreciate your time. Best of luck this weekend.
Okay, thank you.
For Midwest Sports Saturday, I'm Jacob Humphrey.
Thanks to Jacob Pumphrey, Sports Information Director at Southern Arkansas University, for taking the opportunity to visit with Coach Keopple. And we'll hear a little bit more about Southern Arkansas as we move on through our show. Midwest Sports Saturday today is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I'm Joey McWilliams. Thanks again for watching, and we're glad to be here in Russellville, Arkansas, for the 4th week of the season, college football season, at least Division II-wise. I know we're going to be talking about some of the different levels of college football. Let's get right into some scores here really quickly. We do have some updates from Division I football within the MidwestSports.net regional footprint. Oklahoma, the number 6 team in the country, a 55-16 win over Texas Tech a little bit earlier today. And here's the Jalen Hurts watch. 491 yards of total offense, 415 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns, 76 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. So 5 TDs on the day for Jalen Hurts, and the Sooners roll, number 6 Sooners. It's Texas A&M over Arkansas. The Razorbacks fall in Arlington. They play that game at Jerry World down in Arlington, and it's a good neutral site for a game. Like those neutral sites, when you get something like that, and it's a series that goes on and on like what A&M and Arkansas are doing. 31-27, the Razorbacks drop another one in this one throughout, though, but just don't pull off the win. Well, Middle Tennessee State was never in this one. Iowa, the number 14 Hawkeyes, 48-3 over Middle Tennessee State, and that's from Division I. A couple of other Division I games of note here in our MidwestSports.net region. Number 5, Ohio State is at Nebraska a little bit later on today. Arkansas State, we talked about the Red Wolves just a little bit earlier. They're at Troy. Southern taking on Arkansas Pine Bluff down the road a little ways. Drake is at Marist. Iowa State at Baylor. And this is a pretty good game. Iowa State coming in 2-1. Baylor 3-0. And Iowa State's won the last 2. The Baylor Bears have a 9-8 series lead overall in this particular matchup. Northern Iowa at Weber State tonight. Kansas at TCU. That was a little bit earlier today. No score on that one. And number 24, Kansas State, is in Stillwater to take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Let's move on to Division II here and talk about, some of the games here, even within the state of Arkansas, because that's where we are today. Number 6, Ouachita. We talked about the Tigers. Well, they are the preseason favorites to win the Great American Conference regular season championship for a 3rd consecutive years, back-to-back times that the Tigers have won in 2017 and in 2018. They're playing for the Paul Sharp Cup today, as Paul Sharp was Ouachita alum and a Southwestern Oklahoma State coach for many years, the winningest coach in Bulldog history. It's Ouachita in Weatherford today to take on Southwestern. Ouachita leads the series 7-1 since the inception of the GAC, 11-4 all time, and the Tigers have won 3 straight. How about Braden Brazil, the reigning freshman of the year in the Great American Conference? And he started his game last week, completing his first 14 pass attempts. He finished the night 21 of 23 for 199 yards and a touchdown in a 31-11 win over Northwestern. And we're about to invite someone else onto the set here. Our set for Midwest Sports Saturday, Paul Smith, Associate Athletic Director at Arkansas Tech and the Director of Athletic Communications. I'm sure there are some other titles that you've been given along the way.
Other duties as assigned is kind of the catch-all. Joe, I'm going to stand up really quickly. I've got a little Charlie horse, but just give me a second.
Okay,
I'll be right with you.
That's all right. Well, this is a new one. We were just talking about the fact that we haven't seen as many cramps on the football field this year with the weather being what it is. We have one in the booth now.
I have a feeling that our athletic trainer would come up to me and say, you need to drink more water. I've got no sympathy for you. So
I believe
he'd
that.
be right.
Listen, let me drop a couple more scheduled games on the list tonight. Of course, Henderson State. This is a battle of two teams that well, I'm going to say Henderson State received votes, so almost in the rankings. Harding in at number 22. Henderson State, one of 2 undefeated teams in the conference. And, Paul, I'll let you jump in here as we talk about a couple more GAC games, and then let's talk some Arkansas Tech. But Henderson State 3-0. Richard Stametti, one of 5 Division II quarterbacks that has surpassed the 1,000-yard mark in passing yards through the first 3 games of the season.
You know, the Henderson offense, as we saw, they have the feel that they had during the Kevin Rogers era. Very potent offense. I mean, you know that Coach Maxfield is going to have a well-coached, well-prepared team, and it shouldn't be any surprise to anybody that they're 3-0 right now. They could win a lot of games this year.
Well, we just have to keep watching the Reddies then. And that was something I had a chance to visit with Stametti a couple of weeks ago, and he said, listen, we want to bring it back to the days when it used to be. What Henderson State Ready football, that was how he pronounced it, Ready football, what it used to be.
You know, I'll tell you, a few years ago, we played Henderson State in it was the Murphy USA game in El Dorado. And I got pulled over for speeding on the way down there. And state trooper came up to my car and asked me where I was in such a hurry to go. And I said, well, we're on our way to play Henderson State today. And he says, well, I'm a Henderson State grad. Why are you in such a hurry? So I said, man, I'm even getting trash talked by the police.
And on a related note, he's not the only Great American Conference SID that's ever been pulled over for speeding going to a football game. So if you're listening, Jay Lindley, I know that you're probably not alone either from some of those.
He didn't give me a ticket.
Okay.
He let me off with a warning.
Well, they're taking on Harding tonight, and Henderson State leads this series 33-21-1. Since the GAC began, I found this to be an interesting stat, though, Paul. The road team has won every one.
That is pretty interesting. I mean, and both of those teams have been so solid since the foundation of the league. You would think that it would be the other way around, defending the home field, but you can't ever be surprised when a team the caliber of Harding or Henderson State wins a game, regardless of where it's played. And I think you could put either one of those teams with any team in the country, and it's going to be a toss-up at this point.
Paul Smith, the Associate Athletic Director, here with us on Midwest Sports Saturday, which is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Monticello, and you know a little bit about that school as an alum of Arkansas Monticello, at Northwestern tonight. UAM leads the series 5-4, 2-2 in Alva. The Boll Weevils are 2-1 on the season. I think maybe a little bit of surprise to a few folks, but this particular matchup has been wild in recent years. It was a 44-38 Boll Weevil victory last year.
Well, Hud Jackson's done a tremendous job at that school down south, but I tell you, the Northwest Oklahoma, I think, is a school to watch every year. I've been so impressed with how they've come, just not just as a football program, but as an athletic department. When you go back to the start of the league and what they've been able to do to improve their facilities, that's a sleeping giant up there, Joey.
All right, so that it could be anybody's game once again tonight. And then, of course, the game that's going to take place behind us a little bit later on. We're a little bit less than an hour and a half away from kickoff on that one. Southern Arkansas and Arkansas Tech. Mule Riders come in 2-1. and undefeated, and took a little bit of a beat down last week. 31-0 loss. Of course, Coach Keopple, you just heard him talking about that game last week, taking on the Wonder Boys of Arkansas Tech.
Well, if you look at the last 2 weeks for Southern Arkansas, you had the game against Oklahoma Baptist that came down to the wire, and then the uncharacteristic performance, I think, would be the best way to put it, against Harding. Now, this is a team that's going to come out and be hungry, and you have to expect that the Southern Arkansas team here in week number 4 is going to put on a pretty good performance, and it's going to be tough for this Arkansas Tech team that's really still trying to find its identity. New head coach, new look team. There's a lot of moving parts. They're still trying to figure out where they need to go. There's a lot of talent out there, Joey. So, it's a toss-up, but, you have to know you're going to see a very motivated Southern Arkansas team after these last 2 weeks.
I would imagine, and that does warrant that mention. You go back to that Oklahoma Baptist game 2 weeks ago. That was won on a 48-yard field goal. I believe it was the 6th longest in Southern Arkansas history. I do recall that, and that was as time expired to get a 30-28 victory. So you're right. If the Mule Riders are going to come and show that this is a team that really can continue in the conference, had a decent season last year and dropped off. I mean, really dropped off at the end of the year. They should be motivated to play tonight.
But, Southern Arkansas really needs to look no further than last week's opponent to see what happens when the team gets off to a start that might not be the best. Harding had a slow start last year, turned around, really made a great year out of it. So it's early yet. It is not too late for any team to get in position to make a playoff run.
Right, that's exactly right. Well, Paul, since I have you here really quickly, and again, Paul Smith, the Associate Athletic Director here, and a friend of mine, actually. I'm very, very grateful to have you to come in and sit in next to me. We've had the chance to broadcast in various capacities. I say that with some of these folks, but I mean really various capacities.
Yes.
In the past 6 or 7 years.
It's been across the board.
Really across the board, to everything from, just getting to shoot layups on a basketball court, and I watched Paul stand and watch an entire set just all but disintegrate behind him, and I'm praying that doesn't happen with this set today too. And by the way, the rain has held off, praise God, so I'm glad about that. Talk a little bit about Arkansas Tech. One thing you mentioned was the fact that there are some talented players out there. I think across the board here at Tech, there are always going to be talented players. You all recruit very well and have great facilities.
Yeah, and it's not just football. It really has been across the entire athletic program. Look no further than the GAC All Sports Trophy and how many times it's landed here in Russellville, all but 2 years since the formation of the conference. Our golf programs are consistently competing for national championships. Volleyball had a season a couple of years ago where they went 35-1. Softball is on the rise. Baseball's on the way back. Basketball's going to be good this year. And then, you look at football, and there was a lot of turmoil in the program over the last year. You went through a coaching change. But Coach Ship, an alum of Arkansas Tech, is uniquely qualified to talk to these student athletes about the Arkansas Tech experience. He's not only the head coach here, he's been an assistant coach here, and he played here. So he understands the program. He knows what it means to be a Wonder Boy. And if there's anybody who can sell how important that is, it's Kyle Ship.
Okay, well, I know that you have duties, but I want to point out really quickly that you and Sam both were very quick to mention those 6 all-sports trophies within the Great American Conference. Is that a talking point? Did you all have that prepared for when you address the media? Oh, and by the way, of the 8 years, 6 of those trophies are right back there.
Yeah, we got a lot of hardware here, but no, we didn't coordinate that. That's something I think that as a campus we take a lot of pride in, because it shows that there is that commitment to being successful both on and off the playing surface. I mean, we have students who are going to come in here and graduate, and we're having those students come in, they graduate, and they win. And that's really what you're trying to do as a Division II athletic program. I mean, there's an old NCAA tagline that they retired about a certain percentage of college athletes who are going to go pro in something other than the sport they play. But it's one of the most true things I've ever heard. We're preparing these young men and women for life after college, and for a lot of them, the chance to play a college sport might open that door to them where they wouldn't have been able to get that education otherwise. So, if you're wondering what kind of team we have this year, ask me in 20 years when we see how, what kind of parents they are, what kind of people they are. But I think there are some very high-quality individuals, student athletes and coaches, and it really makes it a joy to come to work every day.
Well, Paul, I have no doubt, knowing you, that in 20 years you'll know where those players are. You'll know their families, and you'll know that because you're that kind of a person and a very personable associate athletic director and all-around good guy. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Joey. Thanks for having me.
Paul Smith, the Director of Athletic Communications, but I like to say Associate Athletic Director. That's a good title for you, as he has sat in with us for just a little bit. Again, Midwest Sports Saturday, presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. We'll run down a couple more games on the docket as we have another guest coming up here in just a few moments. And again, don't forget that this game will kick off in an hour and 20 minutes at Southern Arkansas and Arkansas Tech. If you have the opportunity to pull these things up on the internet through each school's websites, you're going to get some good broadcasting there with both of these play-by-plays. We've already heard from Sam Strasner. We'll get to hear hopefully from Dan Gregory a little bit later on. Again, I tease if he finds us, so we'll see if that works out. Also today, Southwest Minnesota State at Upper Iowa. That's going on today. It's Emporia State at Lincoln. And this is a series that goes back a long ways. It's been played only 6 times. Emporia State leads the series 4-2. And you go back to the 1958 Mineral Water Bowl when these two teams met up for the first time. Lincoln took the victory in that one. Lincoln, again, making its way back into the MIAA football schedule. Missouri Southern at Fort Hays State tonight. It's Pittsburgh State, the number 18 team in the country, at Nebraska Kearney. And Pitt State is tied for that number 18 ranking with Central Missouri, also at number 18, and hosting Washburn. That is going on a little bit later on today. Central Oklahoma at Northwest Missouri, the Bearcats, number 7 in the country in Division II. UCO won last year 31-21 in Edmond. Northwest Missouri State, as you might imagine, leads this series, leads at 8-3. 3-0 are the Bearcats right now, and the Broncos, by the way, 2-1 on the season. This should be a good matchup. I like this stat line here. Jarrell Green, who is the MIAA Defensive Player of the Week, recorded 2 of Northwest's 6 interceptions. 6 interceptions by the Bearcat defense, and returned 1 for a touchdown in a 66-34 victory last week over Missouri Southern. Sophomore Braden Wright is continuing to tear it up at the quarterback spot. Lindenwood at Davenport tonight. It is Missouri SNT. The Miners are receiving votes in the latest AFCA Division II football poll. Well, the Miners are at William Jewell tonight, and Missouri SNT has scored a school record 128 points through the first 3 games of the season. That includes a 49-21 victory over Miles last week. And the Miners also one of just 2 teams in Division II that ranks in the top 20 nationally in 4 offensive categories: in total offense, in rushing, in passing, and in scoring. Missouri Western 1-2 on the year, on the road to take on Northeastern State, and the Riverhawks are 0-3 against this season. Missouri Western 9-0 all-time against Northeastern State, and that includes a 66-16 victory in St. Joseph last year. That game is in Tahlequah, which is where we were here at Midwest Sports Saturday just a couple of weeks ago. Southwest Baptist at number 12, Indianapolis, and UIndy trying to win the GLVC for another season. Well, 3-0 on the year. Lead this series with Southwest Baptist 4-1. It is Truman and the Bulldogs also receiving votes in the latest Division II football poll. Well, Truman is at Quincy tonight. Spencer Newell returned a punt 71 yards for a touchdown, and that earned him the Special Teams Player of the Week honor in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. That is the third consecutive week that a Truman Bulldog has won Special Teams Player of the Week. Chadron State on the road at Western Colorado, and that game should be just about wrapping up. Both teams 1-2 on the year. Dalton Holst, don't forget about him, as he threw for 409 yards in this matchup last season. Minnesota Crookston at Wayne State today. It is East Central at Oklahoma Baptist, and Southeastern taking on Southern Nazarene. Now let's look through the Division III schedule here for just a moment, and then we want to talk about something else that's of interest here. Hendricks at Birmingham Southern, Dubuque at Wartburg tonight. It's Lawrence at Cornell, Loris at Central, Buena Vista at Simpson a little bit later on, Luther at Coe, McAllister at Grinnell, Minnesota Morris at Iowa Wesleyan, and WashU on the road, and the number 23 WashU Bears at Carthage. And this is something that my sports knowledge for years back. I've always been a big fan of the Olympics and all that goes into that. What a big deal that the Olympic Games are. And it still, I believe, brings the world together. And I know that wherever your take is on where the world is right now, there are so many things, even within our country itself, so many divisions, but the Olympics seem to always be a shining point. And so this is something special. One of the fields on the campus at Washington University in St. Louis is being renamed. Of course, St. Louis hosted the 1904 Olympic Games, and it was the first year in which they handed out medals. Well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I'll let Bob Costas tell you about this.
Hi, I'm Bob Costas. St. Louis has the distinction of being America's first Olympic city. This historic field at Washington University, named after David R. Francis, a WashU grad and governor of Missouri, has the distinction of being not only the first modern-day Olympic stadium, but the oldest Olympic stadium in constant active use. Through David R. Francis's visionary leadership, St. Louis hosted both the 1904 World's Fair and the third modern Olympiad. It was on this track where a young hurdler born in Hannibal, Missouri, George Pogue, became the first African-American to participate in an Olympics and to win an Olympic medal. It's here where the Olympic decathlon made its debut. It's here where the gold medal was born and the Olympic tradition of awarding gold, silver, and bronze began. To recognize this field's significance in Olympic history, the International Olympic Committee and the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committees have bestowed a rare honor upon Washington University. They will now rename this site Francis Olympic Field. I'm pleased to be part of this effort that's celebrating St. Louis's ongoing role in the Olympic movement. I hope that Francis Olympic Field will be an ongoing reminder of St. Louis's contribution to the Games and our enduring status as an Olympic city.
How cool is that? Francis Olympic Field on the campus at WashU. I want to say thanks to Chris Mitchell, who is the Associate Athletic Director for Communications there at WashU. And I appreciate all that he does, not only for our show, Midwest Sports Saturday, which this week is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, but for all of the sites with which I work as well. I'm Joey McWilliams. Thanks again for watching this episode. Morningside, the number one team in the NAI Idol this week. The Mustangs are 3-0, and a couple of bye weeks, if you will. So whoever comes down the line for the Morningside Mustangs in the GPAC schedule needs to be ready, because these guys are rested and ready. Of course, Morningside went through the entire schedule last year, 15-0, a national championship for the Mustangs, the number one team in the country, and I believe rightfully so. However, I would say there's a case to be made for Benedictine. Benedictine, the Ravens just continue to play at an absolute tear. Taking on Culver Stockton this week, Benedictine had two players last week with at least 100 yards rushing. Marquis Stewart, and again, it's the usual suspects. Marquis Stewart with 169 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had a TD reception as well, so 4 touchdowns on the day. Charles Nyhart in the backfield with him, 101 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. And don't forget about Isaac McPherson, a third player with nearly 100 yards rushing. McPherson had 96 yards, and a touchdown. The Ravens put up 634 yards of total offense. 461 of those were rushing yards. This is where it really gets to be interesting, though, I think, for what Benedictine does. And this was a matchup last year in the national semifinals. It really came down to the wire between Morningside and Benedictine. I think that voters in the polls, and by the way, MidwestSports.net, we have a vote in the NAIA F-ball poll, so be looking for that as well. But voters in the polls, I think, really have a tough decision whether to go with Morningside or Benedictine here. We've talked about the offense over and over and over again. The defense last week allowed only 7 first downs. Only 7 first downs. And 4 of those were by way of penalty. So in essence, they gave up 4 of them. So, you could look at it and say, technically, really allowed only 3 first downs over the course of the day. By the way, Marquis Stewart is number 1 in the NAI with 641 rushing yards as of right now through 3 games. 113 rushing touchdowns on the season. The number 4 team in the country, Kansas Wesleyan, on the road taking on Ottawa today. Texas Wesleyan is at Lion. Briar Cliff continue to watch the Chargers there at Concordia today. Central Methodist at William Penn. Dakota Wesleyan at Dort. Evangel at Grandview. That game took place a little bit earlier today. Sorry, we don't have a score on that one just yet. Jamestown at Northwestern Iowa. It is Mid-America Nazarene taking on Clark at Clark today. Again, first-year program up there for the Pride. Baker at Peru State. Missouri Valley is at Graceland. Waldorf at Dickinson State. St. Ambrose at St. Francis. Friends at Avila today. Southwestern College at Bethany. More KCAC matchups here. Sterling at Bethel, and a pair of undefeated teams there taking on one another. So someone's going to drop one today. We'll see how that works out. Sterling taking on Bethel. The Warriors at the Threshers. Tabor at McPherson. It is Missouri Baptist at Midland. Hastings at Doane. And Oklahoma Panhandle at Texas College. And just a reminder, Oklahoma Panhandle recognized 100 years of football a little bit early on in the week. A few more things here as we look on through our list. And by the way, we do want to say thank you to the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma for being our exclusive sponsor this week and presenting the Midwest Sports Saturday here from Russellville, Arkansas. The Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma is going to be with us for a few broadcasts this year, and we look in a little bit more at even some of the things that the nation has to offer.
Thank you. Okay, see you tomorrow. Hey. Mom, let me help here. You got this. You're ready.
Back here in Russellville, and again, thank you to the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and all that the nation has to offer in so many different ways, and we will continue to talk about them. Right now, we go back to some sports, and we may or may not be visited by one Dan Gregory, who, again, is the play-by-play announcer for Southern Arkansas University. We'll see if it works out as we are starting to wrap things up here from Russellville, just a little more than an hour away from Southern Arkansas taking on Arkansas Tech here, a Great American Conference matchup. To volleyball, and let's look really quickly. The Nebraska Kearney swept Newman last night. Kearney, the number 3 team in the country, a big matchup against Central Oklahoma today. The Broncos 10-3 on the year, and we will try to get that score to you. We will get that score to you, by the way, this week on Midwest Sports Now. And don't forget, though, Midwest Sports Saturday is the flagship show here that we also do have content on the YouTube channel over the course of the week as well, and getting to visit with some of the athletes and coaches in the area, as well as bringing you some of the news. So we'll talk a little bit more about volleyball, but Nebraska Kearney 12-0 coming into today's matchup with Central Oklahoma. 12-1, however, on the season is Missouri St. Louis. The Tritons lost to Drury last night, a 4-set loss. It was the first GLVC matchup of the season for UMSL, and unfortunately for the Tritons, it was also the first loss. Charlotte Richards had 15 kills and 13 digs in the loss. Speaking of kills, how about this? Waldorf's Kyra Platzik crossed the 1,000 kill mark for a career last night. Unfortunately for the Warriors, who are now 9-7 on the season, they were swept at home by presentation. This news also from the MidwestSports.net region. Fabiola Gonzalez from Nebraska Kearney. We talked about the Lopers volleyball. Well, how about some women's golf? She shot a 67 in the MIAA fall preview. It was a school record. She shot a 79 in the round before, so she did finish 6th in the tournament, but she'll always have that 67 that she can look back on for UNK. And to soccer, Northeastern State coach Rob Slonka earned his 100th win as the Riverhawks coach. They defeated Southern Nazarene 4-2 yesterday and moved to 4-3 on the season. Well, we have had a fantastic time here on the campus of Arkansas Tech University. We do have another big game coming up, and I do want to say thank you to Paul Smith, the Associate Athletic Director here at Arkansas Tech, for not only being on the show with us today, but also getting things together for me over the course of the week and allowing me to get to come up and be here on campus and get to have our broadcast here. Don't forget, next Saturday, Midwest Sports Saturday, which is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, will be on site at Henderson State University in Arkadelphia. So we'll be ready there as the Reddies will play host to the Northwestern Oklahoma State Rangers. Paul talked a little bit about Northwestern Oklahoma a little bit earlier today. I want to say thanks also to Sam Strasner, the play-by-play voice of the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys and Golden Suns, for sitting in. Both of these guys are such great guys, and I really appreciate them. I want to say thanks to Taylor Gomez, who is on site here and working with the video production tonight. She is soon to have an increasing role with the Arkansas Tech Sports Information Department, so congratulations to her on that, and we look forward to seeing what all she's going to be doing there, but I appreciate her help today and all of the Arkansas Tech video crew. I want to say thanks also to the lovely Jody McWilliams, the lovely Mrs. MidwestSports.net, for making the trip with me today to Russellville, and I always appreciate getting to have some of the guests from my own household that get to make the trip here as well. So football just about ready to get started here. You see the Mule Riders getting prepared behind me. On this series, by the way, Southern Arkansas 2-1 on the year, Arkansas Tech 0-3 on the year. Southern Arkansas last week to Harding, and Arkansas Tech lost last week to Henderson State. Again, those two teams meet up a little bit later on today as well. Tech leads the all-time series between Southern Arkansas and Arkansas Tech, 46-31-4, but the two teams have had an even 5 wins apiece in the last 10 games. So we'll see how this one turns out tonight. Someone's going to get the upper hand, at least in recent years in this series. That game is set to kick off. So, again, for Jody McWilliams and for Paul Smith and Sam Strasner, and we do want to say, wherever Dan Gregory is right now, I hope that everything is okay with you. Thanks to every one of you for watching. Don't forget Midwest Sports Now on this YouTube channel. Please do subscribe. We would appreciate it if everyone subscribed. That would help us out tremendously. And like and share this video as well, this live stream. I'm Joey McWilliams. This has been Midwest Sports Saturday, presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. God bless you, everybody. Have a great one.